Hi, my friend. In this video, we're going to be making bouncy disco house bass like DOLLA, and we're going to find out if we can do it in under 10 minutes without using any traditional synthesis. So this is a look at the project file that we'll be working on inside of Ableton Live. And right here, we're listening to the drums, or the bass rather, that we'll be recreating. This is it, it's soloed. And if you can see here, right here we have a reference track, and we are using DOLLA's song Saving Up. So I've mapped the solo key to my S on the keyboard. So this is the reference track, what we're trying to emulate. And this is what we came up with. So it's a little bit different, a little bit more unique, not exactly the right sound, but it's definitely in the ballpark. And I would say the MIDI notes is definitely there. Sound design maybe isn't 100% there. By the way, it did take me about 10-15 minutes to recreate. Hopefully it'll take you even faster when you can follow along with something like this. And as you can see here, this song has actually not been done a lot more than the bass. It's been completely arranged. So it's about a 6-minute tune that's been fully arranged, has been mixed and mastered, and it's ready to go. And this took me about 6 hours over the course of 5 or 6 days, which is pretty fast. And if you need help finishing songs faster, I've also made a completely free ultimate song finishing toolkit. It includes the 5-step song finishing ebook, a collection of samples, presets, and Ableton racks that I use in every one of my songs to really speed things up. And there's also a third extra special gift that you'll have to see for yourself. But you'll have to visit the link in the description to see it, or the link that's on screen now to grab all of that for free. And with that said, let's jump into this. All right. So now back here in Ableton, what we're listening to is just the drums and the bass soloed out so we can focus on this. What you can see here is, yep, I do have this DOLLA Saving Up track that we'll be bouncing back and forth between. So if I press the S on my keyboard, this is the DOLLA track that we will be recreating. So let's have a look at the bass here. So starting off, the first thing that I'll usually do when recreating the bass is I'll start off by figuring out the MIDI. So in this example, I don't know if this song is originally in G sharp. If you listen back, I think it's a different tuning. So what I ended up doing was I copied the pattern, which is just this like kind of whatever this would be offbeat kind of pattern, just pedaling on the same note, and then the last 2 notes it changes up. So I kind of copied that pattern, and I ended up changing the key simply so that I could evolve this into my own original song after using the reference as a kickoff point. So the way that I did this was simply by listening to the actual track and then recreating it slowly, trying to find the right key, trying to find the right notes, and then recreating it just basically by ear like that. Another thing that you can do to help is there's websites. So all you can do, like, you know, look up DOLLA Saving Up key and BPM on Google, and it should also give you a rough idea of what the key is to give you a good starting off point. That's another trick for you there. So what I'll usually do when recreating this is I'll focus on just this one sound here. So right here is a sub sound, and I'll always usually start off the bass sounds with a sub sound. It's almost a similar idea of if you're trying to figure out something, you start on a piano because it's the most simplest sound, and then you can get into the sound design later and you can really focus on the notes. That's kind of the same idea that I go about creating my basses. And I also like to have my subs on a separate track so that the subs is a very simple sub sine bass, and it's filling up the low end, and then the mid bass comes in additional layers to add the character of the bass. So in terms of the sub sound, I'm using a preset called Subs You Can Hear from a really cool producer. His YouTube channel is called Seed to Stage, and this was a free download, so definitely check it out. But essentially all it is a sub sound, like a sine wave, where you can add some saturation and additional harmonics to allow it to be better heard on laptop speakers and those kinds of things, and cut through the mix a bit more. Other than that, I do have this like little channel strip that I'll sometimes throw on my tracks. But the main thing is that I'm using a 1-knob sidechain that's just going to quarter notes instead of like linking it to the kick drum or anything like that. I find it a lot faster. This is actually one of the things that you can download for free in that thing that I was talking about. And then let's move on. So then moving into the more, I guess, sound design section of this, the next part is I have this next track called Mids. And what this is instead, you might notice that it added a sound without any MIDI playing. And the way that I do this is if you set a MIDI channel to in, like you can see here. And then you can select which channel you want the MIDI to feed into. So you see I selected subs. So this means that the MIDI from subs is going to be going into this channel to trigger the sounds here. So this way it's a lot easier to, you don't have to like copy and paste the MIDI over and over again, particularly if it's going to be playing the same sound. It's a lot easier to deal with, and that's how I prefer to work. Tip for if you want to go that way. How I've ended up processing this is pitched it down 12 semitones. It's needed that compared to the sound of the subs there. And I'm using this bass sample that I basically grabbed from a VST that I like and threw it into Ableton, so it wasn't loading this huge VST. So now it's just using the samples instead. What I'm doing is removing about the lows around 200 hertz is where the cutoff is there, so that the subs will come through. So this is mostly just the mid character. The subs is all being taken care of by the actual sub track. Then the main other thing that you're going to want to pay attention to here is, again, I have that one knob side chain, which is just making room for the kick and adding that kind of fun bounce. The next thing that we have going on here is a Moog sound. And so what I did here was I just found a Moog one-shot sample from Splice and then dropped it into a simpler here on Ableton. And that way it's going to play the notes as it plays. And this is where I decided to get a little bit more unique and creative with the sound. I think ultimately what you're listening to in the DOLLA track is really just, if you listen to it, is probably just some kind of Moog kind of analog sound, which is cool, but it's not really my vibe. So I wanted to kind of recreate that a little bit in what we have here. So let's go ahead and solo up let's go ahead and solo this out how we had it. So we had it with the subs, mid, and this Moog sound. And so basically what I did is, like I said, dropped in a one-shot sample of that Moog bass, dropped it in here. Then what I have here is this Spectral Resonator. If I turn it off, that's how it sounds without it. And with it, basically, it's kind of changing the sound a bit. So with the Spectral Resonator, you can set the mode to MIDI and then decide where the MIDI is going to come from. And then it's going to change the spectral sound of the audio following the notes of the MIDI track that you've linked it to. So now it's again following the MIDI track there to adjust the sound using this interesting Spectral Resonator kind of sound. Then other than that, we have most of the lows getting cut out at 146 hertz, making room for the sub once again, and then crank the side chain here so that it is bouncing quite a bit. And then the last thing that I did here is this extra layer. You can hear that. Let's turn it off. Turn it back on. So this is a weird one for sure. So what I did here is there has been something that I've been playing around with, a plugin called SynPlant. And what you can do is similar to how in the previous video when I mentioned I extracted out the hi-hat and used it in the drums that I recreated, I also extracted out a layer of the bass and then I dropped it into this program here called SynPlant. And what's cool about it is what it'll do is you can drop an audio sample into this and it'll try to recreate it using AI. So as you can hear, if we listen to this maybe on its own, it doesn't really sound that much like the original sound. I do have the Spectral Resonator on. We'll turn that off. Even less like it. So when I threw it in, the tonality was wrong. And then this is a good example. When you throw the Spectral Resonator on and then attach the MIDI so that it's coming from one of the notes that you actually want it to play, it can force it into a more melodic kind of sound. Again, more unique when compared to the original tune, but I thought it's interesting, and overall the vibe is there, but it's definitely a little bit more unique, so I can then transfer it into a more original song. I'm not trying to fully just recreate this tune at the end of the day. I'm writing songs every single week so that I can use the references to get better and better at mixing and sound design and choosing stuff, but ultimately I want to be able to transfer it over to an original composition, which we'll get into in a future video. But with that said, huge ramble, sorry, hopefully that was useful. But yeah, so we're using that SynPlant AI kind of sound. Then what we're doing is we're moving a bunch of the lows to make room for the sub. And we're using a little bit of that one knob width that I was talking about to push it to the sides a little bit so that the subs is mostly taking up the middle. Then we're running into that Spectral Resonator, linking it to the sub MIDI so that it's following the notes a lot tighter. And then I'm using a transient designer to remove some of the sustain so the notes are a bit tighter. Then we have a one knob side chain to have it bounce against the kick. And then we have one knob saturation so that it's filling out more of the frequency range and filling out the sound a little bit more. That there is a look at the bass. Again, if we flick back to the original, the note selection, like the pattern, is pretty on, but the sound design that I ended up with is similar, but definitely more unique and usable for something else. But yeah, huge little ramble there. In the next video, we'll be going over the synths, which sound a little bit like this. And definitely went down a different route when adding in the synths. So it's an interesting aspect to start stuff as it with a reference track and then slowly evolve into your own unique creative composition. That sounds like something you'll be interested in. Definitely stay in store for the next video where we'll be going into that in particular. Hello again, my friend. Hopefully you found that video useful. If you'd like to follow along yourself with the 5-step song finishing checklist, there will be a link in the description below where you can get access to that completely for free. And it's going to help you finish your songs a lot faster and better than ever before. If you found this video useful, like and subscribe and all that good stuff, but really the best thing I can do for you is hook you up with that free checklist, so make sure you check that one. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video, my friend. Have a good one.